Hello again from Peru. Last time we traveled with you from Lima to the city of Nazca and looked at the mysterious Nazca lines in the desert. And today we're going to be making our journey to the city of Cusco, the capital of old Incan Empire. Traveling from the coastal region to the mountains does never happen on a straight line. But the beautiful benefit is that you start climbing up into the high Andes, and the views that open up in front of you are truly breathtaking. Have you ever seen double halo? Well, we did. Leaving Nazca, that was another mysterious present that we were gifted with. For those of you who one day may be traveling this route, I'll show you the way we went. We broke our passage into 4 parts. So the first town we stayed in was Puquillo, then it was Chalahuanca, and finally Abancay and Cusco. The total journey from Lima to Cusco is about 1,100 kilometers, or roughly 700 miles. And even though it doesn't look that much, yet the first part, which is from Lima to Nazca, is only 200 kilometers. You do in a couple of hours, but every next step takes you literally a whole day travel, simply because the roads are like intricate tapestry. They absolutely embroidery style moving through the mountains. The road gradually took us over to the greener parts of the mountains before taking us even higher into the dry regions of Altiplano at altitudes anywhere between 3,500 and 4,000 and over 4,000 meters, which is above 12, 13, up to 14,000 feet. And for example, on this footage, there's no way to tell that you are actually at such extreme altitudes. Very often these extremely high plateaus stretch out for many, many kilometers. In fact, this particular valley was about 60 miles or about 100 kilometers long. But even at these extremely high altitudes, there are people who are making their living along the road. Like this lady and her adorable kid. She prepared a meal for us that was cooked just for the two of us. But then eventually the road takes you back into zigzagging between the greener mountains, where people have at least some trees around and other things to hide behind in order to catch you and give you a speeding ticket. The towns we stayed at are drastically different from the capital of Lima and other big cities. These are small towns with homey little hotels run by local families, very often without any parking space, so we had to hide our motorcycles in somebody's backyards. And actually not because we were scared for security, it's just we were not yet used to the simplicity of life up in the mountains. Another village, then another Altiplano at the top of the world, and a small town again with the cathedral and a Christmas tree and a simple life, and of course the town's dogs chasing you and trying to bite your back tire. Some parts of the road really made you wonder if you were still on the right track, because it really looked like you were going somewhere where you didn't intend to go. What the road always reminded you of is that the Andes, as the mountains, are still very, very active, and they're very tall. And they're constantly moving. So the parts of the road that look like a one-lane road frequently, if not every year, washed out either by the river or by another landslide. And so the work on this road is going on continuously. Sometimes it is hewn right out of a nearby hill. Very often some of these smaller towns in the villages would be cut off from any civilization or from any vehicles reaching them for days or weeks on end, just because another mountain decided to shake some dust off its back. But most of these communities are very self-sufficient. They have water, they have their crops, predominantly potatoes and corn. They have their sheep and their llamas and their vacas or cows. So life here is very self-sufficient. And people are very resilient. Here's an example of a town at the top of the world, as I always say, where we had to very slowly go through the streets because in front of us was a large vehicle and there was no way to overtake it. But thanks to this vehicle, we were able to look through the streets and look at the towns a little more in detail. Many of these towns at very high elevations are actually mining towns. So they were established originally when a local mine that is probably mining some kind of rare earth metal, very often copper or even coal. The town was started when the mining community began its work here. So you very often see this large machinery being transported to some of these towns because this is their trade. That is what they do up there on the tops of the mountains. Sights are constantly changing, passing from one town to the next, the weather changes, the fog comes, you get a little bit of hail, a little bit of rain, you go through bridges and various passes by the rivers and between the mountains. It's a constant change of scenery, which makes this trip from down the Pacific coast all the way up to the tops of the Andes and onto the other side very, very scenic route. And it's worth taking it slowly because you really see such variety and diversity, not only in towns and living conditions, but nature and weather, the character of the land. Then, at one point, getting off one of those one-lane highways onto a normal highway, all of a sudden, you really start questioning, are you at the right spot? But yes, you are. And you continue yet to another town. Actually, on this road, I discovered a town or a city that probably will go down through my history book as my least favorite town in the world. It is a town that's actually not just disliked by me, but by multiple travelers that I have met on the way. We all have something against a place called Abancay. Abancay is only about 200 kilometers away from the usual destination for most travelers from the coast into the Andes, a city called Cusco, which was and still is a center of Incan culture in the Andean region. But Abancay has got something that no one can really explain or put their finger on, but Google never ever takes you through the town without some kind of fun experience and wondering about. It never takes you to your hotel with simple directions. Traffic in Abancay almost reminded me a little bit of India. I have footage from various trips through it, and I've been through it probably 5 or 6 times during our stay in Peru, and it has never been easy. It has always been wandering around the town through one street or the other. Sometimes map takes you up the road, which is almost 45-degree angle, only to join to another very busy road with concrete trucks passing through, and you literally have to pick up the speed at the bottom of a hill and get to the top of it without stalling your bike on a corner and seamlessly get into the flow of traffic, hoping that nobody's going to run over you when you're doing a 90-degree turn on a heavy, fully loaded travel bike. So Abancay has created many a story with many a traveler who have passed through it. And so was our first story. The first day passing through Abancay, we were just drying our clothes after another downpour, and Google took us for a spin around the entire midtown, through every market possible and every traffic jam possible, and eventually we got stuck behind a garbage truck looking for our hotel, which was literally on the next street. But ever since that day, Abancay was not my favorite. Another name for Abancay between Mike and I is a rooster town, because we were always woken up by roosters at about 3 or 3:30 in the morning every time we stayed in Abancay in our hotel, and no matter how well you closed your windows, you could hear them from every direction. Once we reached the Cusco region, passing through few historic places like Chincheros and Urubamba, we made our way to the base town of most travelers to Machu Picchu, the town called Ollantaytambo. I assume we left most rainy days back before reaching Lima, and our journey up, even though out of 4 days, 2 days were pretty rainy and foggy, we did have some beautiful sunny moments on the way up. There will be another video dedicated solely to the city of Cusco, and you will see it in more detail. On the other side of Cusco, lowering ourselves to a better elevation than Cusco City, which sits at about 3,200 or 11,000 plus feet, we got to a sacred valley. Unfortunately, it was a rainy season and there's not much good footage left from that trip. But we did go to Machu Picchu, and it did happen literally only days before the universal shutdown of the whole world, and at that time we did not know that it was coming our way, or rather what was coming our way. So we enjoyed the scenery, tried to make the best of our stay in the Sacred Valley and a visit to Machu Picchu in spite of the weather and lack of beautiful sunny days with bird blue sky, but we immensely enjoyed our new discovered place of interest. Little did we know that we will get acquainted with it a lot better in the coming 2 years. Another noteworthy town that no one visiting Machu Picchu should exclude from their itinerary is the town of Ollantaytambo, which is the base town for your trip to Machu Picchu, and a lot of people did not pay much attention to its significance, and it truly has an amazing history and many interesting places which are no less interesting than Machu Picchu itself and are very worth of your visit. The drive into it, however, is less pleasant. There are still cobblestone roads at the main entrance to Ollantaytambo, and on a large, heavy motorcycle fully loaded with travel gear after the rain on slippery stones is not the most pleasant moment that you live through, but it's a beautiful little village. Well, after not doing our very best to see everything that there is to see in the Sacred Valley and in Ollantaytambo, even Machu Picchu, we left the region and made our way, bypassing Cusco, in the direction of the Lake Titicaca, passing through extremely high elevation markets and looking again at llamas and local ladies and the llama merchandise that is sold everywhere to the delight of tourists. Alpaca shawls and hats and everything under the sun. We booked a hotel in Sicuani, a very nice looking hotel called Coricancha, and upon arriving there we were upgraded to a better room for only about $10, but little did we know that the beautiful wall windows were overlooking not only the picturesque mountains but also a local jail. And to the delight of the security guards in the watchtowers of that jail, when we came out on our balcony to see what we could see, we were met by curious gazes and the muzzles of the guns. So we very quickly shut our windows and our curtains and looked at the city through another small window on another wall. The next day we arrived at the city of Puno on the shore of Lake Titicaca as a capital of the Puno region in Peru. Quaint little town, again, at very high elevation. The lake itself sits at 12,500 feet. To me, every visit to Puno, I marveled at how at that elevation, the sky and the surrounding mountains always look almost like you're watching a movie. I guess the density of the air is so low that you see everything through a very different lens in your eye. We stayed at the Marina Hotel on the shores of the lake. We intended to stay in Titicaca for 2, 3, or 4 days to see the beauty of it and to discover floating islands of Uros and a few other places. It's a very rich historical region. But literally the next morning, we were greeted at breakfast by a group of señores who were discussing the new problem that everyone in the world was facing, namely the pandemic of 2020. Figuring out that I spoke a smattering of Spanish, they asked me whether we were going on the way to Chile and whether we were planning to cross the border with Chile anytime soon. I confirmed that, to which they proceeded to tell me that today, and it was a Sunday, the border was to close for the unspecified amount of time because of the global pandemic, and apparently all the borders all over the world were closing between countries, and we knew nothing about that. So our departure from the lake was very sudden, and a trip that took us 4 days. We had to now make the same trip from the top of the Andes all the way down to the Pacific coast to the town of Tacna, Peruvian town on the border with Chile. We had to get there before midnight of the same day and try to cross the border. Choosing what seemed to us to be the shortest route to the coast, we proceeded leaving as soon as we could pack our bags, as it often happens.
This is my last day in Peru. Of course, I have to pick this day. I got to make the most miles, got to cross the border, and I have to pick a dirt road in the mud. But it's so beautiful here that I decided to take this video to remember how beautiful it is. Julia. Julia had a nice event just recently. She went down a really muddy road and she laid her down in the mud. So we have an official adventure bike here. It's not used to. The llamas both fell down on the same side. We're going through an absolutely beautiful gorge.
Course, nothing cooperated. There were bad weather reports, severe storms that were happening exactly on the route that we were taking. Unknown amounts of kilometers of gravel and dirt roads of unknown conditions that we had to go through. But yet we proceeded, and it was definitely a learning experience for me, because I think that day the amount of dirt roads that we have gone on were the largest amount for me in my very short month-and-a-half career of riding a big motorcycle. But we went through everything. We went through the hail,
14,500 feet.
and the rain, and snow at the top of the Andes, and then dense fog on the other side, and high altitude, fearing that we will not find any gas midway, since at the high altitude motorcycles consumption grows exponentially. We went through absolutely breathtakingly beautiful route, very hard and harsh, yet as you can see there were plenty of beautiful spots and sights to behold. We did not run out of fuel. We even got a high altitude baked in the oven lamb and local potatoes for lunch. But I'll let you take in the surroundings. Eventually, in the dusk, we lowered extremely rapidly. Within an hour's ride, we probably went down 2,000 meters, or about 6,000 feet, and lowered ourselves into the valley of the city of Tacna, a Peruvian border town on the border with Chile. Got stuck for about an hour in a traffic jam in the local market, because that is how this highway was entering the city. The difference in weather condition was very drastic, as we came from a high altitude with extreme cold and all of a sudden ended up in humid and hot market of Tacna. The border lay about 20 miles from the city itself, and we made it in the dark at around 8:30 in the evening, when we finally were next in line to process our documents to cross the border into Chile. We were surprised by the following. I had wrong information that as a holder of my passport, I would get a visa to Chile upon arrival at a land border, and that information was incorrect. And Michael had a free pass into Chile, but I did not, and I was turned around and told that without a proper sticker visa in my passport, I am not able to enter into Chile. And not wanting to separate in this uncertain time, we made a choice to return back to Tacna and attempt the following day to get me a visa the fastest way possible. And little did we know that because of that, our plans have drastically changed, and the new adventure was on the horizon.